This is Right to Life Radio with John Girardi on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
A couple of big-time victories. Planned Parenthood is out of the Title X game. And the California Department of Finance opposes SB 24, giving us a clear path to Newsom vetoing the bill. Two good pieces of news today on Right to Life Radio. John Girardi with you as always. You can learn more about us at Right to Life of Central California, of which this show is a production, by going to rtlcc.org. rtlcc.org. Joining me today, as always, the CEO of California Family Council, Mr. Jonathan Keller.
John, it's always good to be with you, even on an early, well, I mean, it's not early now, but it was relatively earlier today.
Yes. Well, anyway, we let's not peel back the curtain too much. Right to Life Radio, always good to be with you. Always good to have Jonathan Keller in the studio.
This is how I am on Saturday mornings, John. It's been a long week, okay?
Yes, exactly. If you want to learn more about Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org is the place to be. Okay, as I said in the show open, we had two very good pieces of news this past week, and I'm very happy to share it with you all. So I'm not sure what I should do first. Jonathan, you want to do Title X, or do you want to do the California Department of Finance and their report on SB 24?
I'd say go from state to national. So start with SB 24.
So we're going to start with SB 24. Okay. This is, I think, the biggest piece of news to potentially help stop SB 24 we've had this entire year. It's really a godsend because I think it puts a clear path to the bill either dying in committee or dying before it actually gets a vote on the floor of the before it gets its final vote, or the governor vetoing it. So the California Department of Finance basically was asked to do an analysis of SB 24. And the point of it is to give a fiscal analysis. They did so. After doing so, they determined that they are, quote, are in opposition to SB 24. Now, that sounds good. Everyone's like, in opposition. It's actually even better than it sounds, okay? Because let me sort of explain how entities in Sacramento take positions on different pieces of legislation. It's not simply a binary of support or oppose. There's a whole spectrum of positions you can take on a piece of legislation. For example, you can take the position of support. You can take the position of support if amended. You can take the position of oppose unless amended. And then you can take the position of straight up opposing. And in the middle of it all, you can take the position of we neither support it nor oppose it. But we're interested and we're working on it. We are a tweener, as the lingo that is often used in Sacramento about.
Which, just as a side note, is the most frustrating position because you know that they would much prefer to not have the bill become law.
Well, and the they we are talking about here is the California State University and University of California system. So throughout this whole process of SB 24 and its predecessor bill from the last 2 years, SB 320, the CSU and UC systems have publicly taken the position of the tweener. They've said, we neither support SB 24, which again, I can't believe I didn't do this. SB 24 is the bill that requires medication abortion to be made available at the student health centers of every CSU and UC. Okay, I can't believe I didn't explain that right at the top. I always feel like I'm over-explaining that, but here we go. The one time I under-explain it when the biggest piece of news about SB 24 has just come down. So SB 24 is the bill that requires the student health centers at every CSU and UC to provide medication abortion. Again, those of you who know this. This is not the morning after pill. This is medication to artificially induce a miscarriage at 8 to 10 weeks of pregnancy. This is the abortion pill, okay? This would be a program to provide that at every CSU and UC student health center, turning all the CSU and UC student health centers into abortion clinics. Now, throughout the whole process of SB 24 and its predecessor bill, SB 320, which was from last year and the year before that, it was like a 2-year bill. The CSU and UC systems have publicly taken this position of not holding any position, neither supporting the bill nor opposing the bill.
Well, you know,
and their representatives would come to these committee hearings and just say, "Oh, you know, we really appreciate what the author's done. You know, we're working very closely with the author on this, but you know, we're not, and certainly we support fully the right of students to access their abortion rights. And we're totally in support of abortion rights," which is like, oh, well, you're a public university. Like, not everyone in California is supportive of that. Certainly not everyone who's paying taxes to you and not everyone who's paying their student tuition fees to you is supportive of this. So glad to hear that you're taking this position. But they have never supported the bill. Now, the CSUs and UCs should simply be in opposition to doing medication abortions in their student health centers. They know full well that this is not something they want to be or should be entangled in. It's beyond the scope of what their student health centers are supposed to be and supposed to do. Student health centers are there to provide you with basic care, you know, whatever care can be provided to you, you know, within the realms of Advil and Tylenol, and then send you to an actual hospital or an actual urgent care clinic if you have something actually wrong with you. That's something that Tylenol and Advil can't heal. So, but nevertheless, because the CSU and UC system are so beholden to the pro-abortion ideology of so many of their faculty and administration, they've basically taken this ridiculous position publicly of saying, well, we neither support the bill nor oppose the bill. Even though I know there are individual campuses within the CSU system that are not thrilled with the notion of this bill and probably don't want it to pass and are probably working behind the scenes to stop it from being passed. This is why, I think that's why Jerry Brown last year vetoed SB 320.
Because they did prevail on talking with him, but they could not prevail upon State Senator Connie Leyva.
Yes, Connie Leyva, who's the author of the bill, and who's a real kind of ice queen when it comes to when you hear her speak about this topic. She's anyway. All right. So the CSUs and UCs have taken this this non-position publicly. That's why it's so significant that the California Department of Finance, an executive branch department that provides fiscal analyses of these bills. This is an executive branch department. It's under the governor. All right. The governor is the chief executive for the state of California. This is a department under his authority. Naturally, the California Department of Finance is going to be inclined towards wanting to support this bill. It's under Gavin Newsom, who's as pro-choice as anybody. Okay. They're going to want this bill to work out. Even they, in their analysis of the bill, concluded that no, this is not only is this not a great bill that we should express some ambivalence towards it, this bill is so bad that they are stating their opposition, not oppose unless amended, not support if amended, but flat out oppose.
Which is really, again, John,
it's the most harsh position you could possibly take on a piece of legislation.
It is kind of shocking because we collectively, the California pro-life movement,
yes,
has been fighting back against this general concept now for 3 consecutive years.
Right.
The bill was first introduced in 2017 by Connie Leyva. It got held over, then got reintroduced. It was continued in 2018. It was finally vetoed.
She amended it significantly in 2018 in a way to sort of provide some protection for the universities from a liability standpoint.
And I think, John, it's funny because it just goes to show that the finance department did not actually take this position last year.
No.
And I kind of think that might be also because they knew, even the finance department had a suspicion that Jerry Brown was going to veto it.
Right.
And it feels
well, it's under Jerry Brown, so he probably said, I'm going to veto this.
So don't worry about it. But it feels like more and more people are kind of having to step out from the shadows and go, we really didn't want to get involved in this. We really were kind of hoping to preserve our fig leaf of pro-abortion advocacy.
Right.
But this is a really bad idea. We can't do this, you guys.
Well, and there's so many ways in which it's dumb. I mean, basically what they're saying, the argument that the pro-choice side has been making, and the big amendment that was made to SB 320 in 2018 was, okay, we're going to set up this private fund to pay for it. And the private fund is going to have $10 million of private funding that will help put in ultrasound machines at every CSU and UC. We're going to have this California Commission on Women and Girls sort of administer the whole program. So by putting in an ultrasound machine, that provides more cover for the universities because, you know, the chief risk in a medication abortion is that you don't is that you take it at a point beyond 8 to 10 weeks of pregnancy, that because then you're starting to induce a miscarriage at later and later points of pregnancy when it is more and more dangerous. So that's not good. So they say, okay, we'll put in ultrasound machines at all the CSU and UC student health centers. You know, the irony of putting in an ultrasound machine not to preserve life or to monitor life, just to end life, is disgusting and horrifying. But nevertheless, the California Department of Finance found some really grave problems with the bill that they basically, they're just saying, this is not fixable. This is not doable. All right, when we come back, we're going to dig into that more, the ways specifically in which it's unfixable and undoable. And I'm going to go on a little rant about the dynamics of politics in the late 20-teens. You're listening to Right to Life Radio right here on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400. This is the Ronettes on Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Right to Life Radio, a production of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Check out our new website, man. It's looking slick. All right. We are talking about SB 24. SB 24 is on the rocks right now. It's the bill to require medication abortion at all CSU and UC student health centers. Yes, you heard that right. The California legislature wants to turn the student health centers at all the CSU and UCs into early term abortion clinics. But just this past week, some help came from an unlikely source, the California Department of Finance. My favorite part about the California Department of Finance report, Jonathan Keller joining us today, by the way.
That's me. Happy to be here.
CEO of California Family Council, californiafamily.org. The thing I loved best about this California Department of Finance report is it basically sheds this light on this certain dynamic that's happening in politics in the 2010s. So one of the, I guess, key dynamics we see at work in politics more broadly is, I'll call it Rawlsism, John Rawlsism versus...
Rawlsianism?
I don't know. John Rawlsism versus broader, loose conservatism that believes in some way in certain ideals and principles of human nature and things beyond technocracy, if you will. So John Rawls basically had this theory about politics that you have to start with things that are sort of... Basically, you cannot operate in politics based on any kind of sectarian beliefs or any kind of deep, broader beliefs about transcendent beliefs, if you will, about human nature or ethics or things like that, that basically the work of politics is the work of technocracy, of people who are experts in these various aspects of public policy, who do their expertise jobs and operate from these basic, universally accessible principles about which winds up not necessarily being basic or universally accessible principles, hence why everyone still disagrees about politics. There's a certain... He claims to not be promoting certain sort of transcendent ideas about human nature while still actually promoting certain ideas about human nature, i.e. that certain human beings, i.e. human beings in the womb, are not as important as others, and blah, blah. That's the natural outcome of this John Rawls theory of politics. So very often what happens at the California legislature is you have the well-moneyed, coiffed, expensive clothes, good suits, lobbyist funded, bus in your very diverse group of students all wearing matching T-shirts to lobby in favor of SB 24. And okay, here's our doctor from UC San Francisco who's doing all these late-term abortions, and he's providing all the research to say that medication abortion is totally safe and totally great and totally fine. Dr. Grossman, you've got this army of students that you bus in from Berkeley. You have all of these medical school students wearing their nice little UC Davis Medical School white, lab coats, and
well, that means that they're better than us, John.
Yeah, of course, they're all better than us. This is opposed to our ragtag, poorly funded team of pro-life activists who have really actually very compelling arguments. But because we're opposed to this sort of technocratic no, this is the lefty, neoliberal, orderly progression of how things should go. Medication abortion is safe. We ignore all the statistics that say it's not safe. We say that it's simple. It provides access. This is the appropriate ideology. We provide access to people. We are maximizing liberalism and choice and blah, 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 blah. This orderly progression that we will pass this legislation and it will be fine and it will be wonderful. And we are just inconvenient speed bumps that are ignored. Meanwhile, the people who actually know what they're talking about as it relates to fiscal arguments are agreeing with everything we have been saying the whole time. Our ragtag group has said there's no way that this program isn't going to involve using taxpayer money to pay for these abortions or increasing student tuition fees. Lo and behold, the California Department of Finance, which is under the executive branch. Okay, this is an executive branch department that is doing an analysis of this bill. They look at the bill and they say, yup, this bill is not adequately funded. There's no way it's not going to result in us having to increase student tuition fees, which are already too high. And we therefore oppose the bill. Not oppose the bill unless amended, not support the bill if amended.
Which is the
not take no position.
Which is the clever way, just as a side note, that's the clever way that it's very often these individual entities or administrations try to sound positive and put a very positive spin on things. We support the bill if amended. That's right. Like, I will marry you if we never have to go to your parents for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I will marry you if you change literally everything about yourself. Yeah. They didn't couch it. They just said, we oppose this. Now, one of the other ways in which they opposed it is, so the scheme that Connie Leyva put together, Confident Connie, who goes up there and is the queen of this there's this sort of Rawlsian army of left-wing liberal lady government activists who, I think of Hillary Clinton as kind of their queen, how they pretend they exemplify professionalism and how dare you question them, and this is the orderly progression of things, and this is how it's going to go. I don't know if I need to make it gendered. Frankly, there are guys who do the exact same thing. But Connie Leyva is very much cut from this Hillary Clinton cloth. How dare you question me? This is the orderly progression of things. How dare you not vote for me to be president of the United States was sort of Hillary's thought, and she had a rude awakening in 2016 with that kind of mindset. So Confident Connie comes up there and says, oh, yes, she puts this whole scheme together. Yes, we're going to have the California Commission on Women and Girls administer this fund. The California Department of Finance, in their analysis, as part of the reason for their opposition, says, no. The California Commission on Women and Girls lacks the staffing and the expertise to administer a program of this size. California Commission of Women and Girls only has like 4 people on it. 2 of them are on maternity leave. Or 2 of the positions are vacant. I don't know if it was maternity leave. 2 of the positions were vacant. And seemingly, the trains are still running on time. The state of California has not collapsed as a result of those 2 vacancies. Basically, that was a weird little hiccup there. Basically, what they're saying is, Confident Connie, your idea that this is the orderly progression of things, that of course we have all the technocratic expertise here and we've got this all. No. you actually have not planned this out very well. You don't have the resources in place to administer this $10 million program that's going to require renovations at every single CSU and UC, that's going to require all this training, that's going to require all this follow-up at schools that have different insurance plans. Okay, CSU students don't have to have health insurance. University of California students do. University of California offers on, campus-based health insurance plans. CSUs do not. How's the insurance going to work? How's the billing going to work? Who's going to do the billing? Like, there is this whole complicated structure that Confident Connie and her crew have simply just not accounted for. Just didn't think about it. And the California Department of Finance is throwing cold water on this to say this is crazy.
John, it almost reminds me of another situation where we come up with a needlessly convoluted healthcare piece of legislation, maybe possibly that is purposely convoluted and distorted so that maybe next year, we just got to clean up this mess and we just really, come on.
We'll figure out, we'll pass it to figure out what's in it.
Exactly.
As in the words of our illustrious Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, we'll pass it to see what's in it. So that seems to be the mindset under which Confident Connie Leyva was operating. So it's a win for the non-technocrats. It's a win for the people who actually believe in some sort of vision of transcendent human dignity and value.
Assuming that Governor Newsom listens.
Assuming that he listens, and he might not. But I think this is a pretty clear signal that, we're headed in the right direction here. And I think it clears a path for him to veto this without, completely alienating his whole base. All right, we're going to talk about Title X, Planned Parenthood's decision to opt out of the Title X program. Victory is sweet. We're winning so much. Smokey Robinson with us today on Right to Life Radio. This is his song, Ooh, Baby, Baby. The smoothest bumper music in the entire Greater Fresno area radio market. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Right to Life Radio with John Girardi and my buddy Jonathan Keller in studio with me today. Always good to have you, Jonathan. Always good to have Mr. Raphael sliding the sliders over there. All right. We've got a very fun story, which I touched on the John Girardi Show earlier this week. By the way, if you want to listen to my Monday through Friday show right here on Power Talk, the John Girardi Show, every Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. We talk about stuff other than pro-life stuff. So if you think I'm smart about this, you should check out what I have to say about everything.
Allow us to puncture your bubble
if
Monday
you think,
through Friday.
Well, yeah. if you think I'm pretentious lecturing you about this stuff, just you wait until I talk about stuff I don't know everything about. All right.
You haven't heard my hot takes on sports and politics.
Yeah. Want to know what I think about? Okay.
I will say, though, I'm actually very much looking forward, John, because I do feel like sports always gets the short shrift on these shows.
On Conservative Talk Radio, yeah.
Yeah, well, and your show in particular. So I'm excited with the new Notre Dame football season coming up.
Oh, yes. Well, we've got a segment planned out for the John Girardi Show for Fridays. Basically, I'm going to call the two most degenerate gamblers I know, my brother-in-law and the priest who baptized my oldest daughter. They're not degenerate gamblers. They've bet like 3 times in their lives. Anyway, we're going to talk about football lines. All right.
You just don't know very many gamblers if those are the three most degenerate.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just don't. I've lived a very tame life. All right. We're going to talk about the federal Title X program and Planned Parenthood's decision to opt out of it. Oh, I'm so happy about this. It's basically the end of a story we've kind of been talking about on and off for basically the duration of the Trump administration. Because it was like the Trump administration announced that they were going to institute these new rules surrounding Title X and then announced it again and then finally like tried to implement it. And there was all these court cases challenging it. And then finally they unbelievably won at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which was shocking. And were able to put this Title X regulation in place. So what the heck am I talking about? Okay. Title X is a federal law. It was passed by Congress in, I believe, the Nixon administration to provide federal funding for family planning programs. Federal funding for family planning programs. In the 70s, this was the era when the Hyde Amendment was introduced, which put a ban on federal funding for abortion. Congress was certainly divided, as was most of America, on whether abortion should be legal, but there was a pretty broad consensus that the federal government should not pay for abortion. Should not pay for abortion. This resulted in the Hyde Amendment being passed, which has been a rider attached to the federal budget every single year, and it basically says federal dollars through federal health care programs like Medicare and Medicaid cannot pay for abortion directly. We prohibit it from paying for abortion directly. So this was the mindset. So when Congress wrote the Title X program, they said, all right, this Title X money is to fund family planning programs. It is not to fund abortion, and it's not to fund abortion providers. Now, Planned Parenthood, over the lifespan of Title X, has been the single biggest recipient of federal Title X money. Planned Parenthood, last I checked, does a few abortions. Okay, they do like a couple 100,000 every single year. So how the heck did that work? How does Planned Parenthood become this entity that, most recently they were receiving like $60 million per year in federal Title X funds? How did they get around that? Well, they did this devious sleight of hand where they said, okay, here are the four walls of our lovely Planned Parenthood clinic. Within these four walls, magically, there are actually two clinics. There's our Title X clinic, which doesn't do abortions. It just does family planning. And there's our abortion clinic. But boy, howdy, does it do abortions. So magically existing...
It's like a vaudeville act, basically.
Yeah.
What do you believe? Over here, there are no abortions. And now,
well, who are you going to believe? Me or your own two eyes? Okay. And so... with this sleight of hand, they said, no, you're not funding our abortion clinic. You're funding our Title X clinic, which happens to be located in the exact same address, has the exact same staff, has the exact same doctors, and the two clinics refer back and forth to each other all the time. So, I'm visiting for family planning services, which are funded by Title X, and the doctor or nurse practitioner or whatever who's seeing me for these Title X services say, hey, you want an abortion? Here are all your options for how to get an abortion. Let me give you a referral to our abortion clinic, which happens to be located right where I'm standing, so that you can get an abortion. So it basically made a mockery of the text of Title X, which was very clearly stating this is not supposed to fund abortion providers, and it's not supposed to pay for abortions. You're giving Planned Parenthood $60 million for this one purpose. Sure, okay, it's limited to the purposes of family planning programs. But money is fungible. If you give me $60 million for one thing, it frees up all my other money to do all my other things. So basically, they were bankrolling all of Planned Parenthood's least profitable services to allow them to allocate more of their money, more of their time, more of their resources to their most profitable service, the service that bills out at the best rates, abortion. Okay.
John, I'm just thinking here. If, as an example, you had, let's say, a government agency, and Planned Parenthood likes to try to operate as a quasi-government agency.
Oh, yeah.
But let's say you had a DMV office.
Yes.
That they are open every day from 8 to 5.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that in one of those, at that DMV office, even though the building was paid for by taxpayers, and even though the building is maintained, all the property taxes and everything else, it just so happens that as soon as the clock rolls over to 5:01, it becomes a Democratic headquarters for voter registration and get out the vote efforts.
Yeah. That would be bad.
Come on, John. It's totally separate. Yes, technically, they're using the same facility. They're taking advantage of all the electricity and everything else. But
no, this is now a Democratic Party headquarters. Yeah. It happens to have the same address as a government building that's paid for by the federal government. But it's okay. Nothing is commingled. Nothing is mixed up. It's like that only if the...
It's not like the DMV is also doing voter registration during their normal business hours and maybe just referring people.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like that example, only imagine if the Democratic Party headquarters was functioning at the exact same time as all the as all the normal DMV activities were happening. That's how crazy this is. Now, this was challenged in the courts. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals shockingly upheld the Trump administration rule. Basically, what the Trump administration did was it instituted portions of these regulations that the Reagan administration put in place and basically said, no. If you're going to get Title X money, you have to have your family planning clinic be separate, be physically and financially separate from your abortion clinic. You cannot co-locate. So Planned Parenthood basically said, well, we're not going to do that because abortion is fundamental to who we are and what we do. Abortion is our single most profitable, our highest revenue generating service that we provide. After government funding and private donations, it's their single biggest source of revenue. So Planned Parenthood said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep doing abortions. And rather than, clearly the point is not caring for women, providing the sorts of care that Title X allows you to provide. Clearly the point of Planned Parenthood is abortion. And that's why they are walking away from the Title X program. And it just goes to show, judges matter, man. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals was the most left-wing court in the country. It was stacked with Democrat appointees. President Trump has replaced a bunch of Democrat appointees with appointees of his own. And because of that, we got this luck of the draw where we got two in a row awesome decisions from the Ninth Circuit holding up this Title X regulation from the Trump administration, basically making it impossible for Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers to receive this, this big pot of money, this $60 million that Planned Parenthood gets every year. Now, it's not all their federal funding. They get like $400 million from Medicaid reimbursements, but $60 million is nothing to sneeze at.
Not chump change.
Not chump change. All right, we'll talk about this a little bit more for our last segment. You're listening to Right to Life Radio on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400. Brown with us today here on Right to Life Radio. This is Somebody's Baby. Thank you all so much for tuning in. A production, as always, of Right to Life of Central California. We've got an ongoing petition drive for SB24. SB24. If you want to learn more about that, check out our website, rtlcc.org. I'm going to put up, we've got a story there, and you can download our petition in opposition to SB24. We're going to try to deliver a whole bunch of signed petitions opposing SB24 to the Capitol in the next week or two, and to the governor's office to ask him to oppose it. So SB 24, again, the bill to require medication abortion on college campuses, rtlcc.org to learn more. All right. We're talking about the Title X defunding of Planned Parenthood, which is a really significant victory for the Trump administration and really a significant victory for pro-lifers. Again, Title X is the federal family planning program. The text of Title X says it's not supposed to fund abortion providers and it's not supposed to pay for abortion. Somehow Planned Parenthood has been getting $60 million from the Title X program every single year and is the chief recipient of Title X money through a bunch of various sleights of hand to make them, pretend that they have a magical Title X clinic that invisibly exists within the walls of their abortion clinic, as if the two have nothing to do with each other. And the Trump administration said, no, you can't have your Title X clinic and your abortion clinic be located in the exact same spot. They have to be fiscally separate, or they have to be financially separate. They have to be physically separate. And you cannot have your Title X clinic be referring to abortion clinics for abortion. You can't have your Title X clinic refer for abortions.
See, John, I'm going to lean into my example from the last segment on the DMV because a lot of people don't know this, but there is something called the motor voter system.
Yes. Anyone who's been to the DMV in the last few years can testify to how screwy that is.
And you may also have heard there were massive irregularities with the motor voter system.
Yes, I believe my Assemblyman Jim Patterson's been doing a little bit of work on that.
Oy vey. I mean, like the fact that. Anyway, we won't get into the whole thing, but long story short, I saw as many as 80,000, maybe even more than that, voters that were improperly registered, people that were non-citizens that voted, people that were registered twice, people that were re-registered incorrectly. So I
really love how the narrative from the left early in the Trump administration, when Trump was sort of banging the drum about voter fraud, it was basically everyone on the left saying, "Oh, this is just a solution in search of a problem. There is no evidence of voter fraud." And then the California, the largest DMV system in the country for the largest state in the union, it's like, "Oh, hey, we have this whole problem with motor voter. Whoops, might have registered a bunch of non-citizens to vote." Anyway,
the thing is, imagine if you are going to the DMV for normal DMV type of services. You're getting your car registered or, taking a driving test or whatever it is.
Right.
And then they say, "Oh, I see you're here for this, but, are you registered to vote?" "Well, no, I'm actually not." "Oh, well, hold on just a second. Let me take off my DMV employee hat and put on my Democratic activist hat." Okay. Now, I want you to know, we're come over to this window right here. I am the same employee. We're in the same building.
Right.
It is the same hours, but now I am serving as a partisan political function to register you to vote for a specific political party.
Right.
That's essentially what it is. They do all
this
of
is
their...
what Planned Parenthood is. This is effectively what Planned Parenthood was doing to justify them receiving Title X funds, which were not supposed to go to abortion clinics.
All of their innocuous services are happening simultaneously and concurrently. But then, no. I'm literally taking off one hat. I'm putting on my badge. Okay, now I'm wearing my Democratic badge.
Yeah.
And
we're not an abortion provider.
No.
We just happen to be in the exact same building where abortions are done, and our staff is the same staff that does the abortions, and we refer our patients over here to the same building to have abortions, and we're an abortion provider. That's just the way it is. They're just trying to, they've effectively put in place such a stupid and illogical and completely contrary to the obvious intent and plain language of the Title X law that now it's gotten to the point, well, how dare you question Planned Parenthood's right to receive Title X money? And this is, again, from our, lefty technocratic John Rawls overlords who are saying, well, how dare you question whether Planned Parenthood should receive Title X funding? This is just ridiculous. How dare President Trump put in place this gag rule? That's the other thing. They love talking about this as a gag rule. So if you read any media account of this, you're going to see the word gag rule put in place because it's written by a Washington Post or New York Times or AP reporter who completely agrees with Planned Parenthood on this. And they're just parroting Planned Parenthood's talking points. And they'll put in the title of the piece, Trump administration institutes, quote, gag rule. And basically, which is ridiculous. Okay, so the Trump rule is basically a modified version of rules that Ronald Reagan put in place. The Reagan rules were upheld by a Supreme Court decision. Okay, so it's totally legal. Basically, what Reagan said was, you can receive Title X money, but you can't do abortions, you can't refer for abortion, and you cannot even counsel patients about abortion. So, and that was upheld by the Supreme Court as being consistent with the text of Title X. So, the left in the Reagan days, and that it actually extended into George H.W. Bush's administration, was finally changed under Clinton, the criticism of that policy, they would call it the gag rule because you're interfering with doctors and telling them they can't even say the word abortion. How dare you? You're putting a gag on them, preventing them from, providing the best care they can possibly give. This is outrageous. Trump has not gone as far as Reagan went. What President Trump has said is you can't refer for abortion. You can talk to your patient about abortion options, but you can't make the actual abortion referral. And practically speaking, as far as net effect, it's probably not going to be that different in terms of its net effect from the Reagan rule. But that's so the Trump administration actually did things differently to avoid that specific criticism. But because it's kind of similar, and because the media, they know the media won't call them on it, because the media is just full of partisan hacks who view Planned Parenthood talking points as, undisputed fact. Basically, Planned Parenthood has pushed this idea, this is another gag rule. This is another gag rule. And the gag rule is in place again, and Trump is putting in place this gag rule. And the media just uncritically parrots it in the very headlines of their stories. It's not a gag rule. It's simply a prohibition on referrals. It's not that crazy an idea. It was upheld by a Supreme Court decision, and this case has been upheld by numerous decisions from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So this is a big deal. This is the first time that a major segment of Planned Parenthood's government funding has been cut off since George W. Bush never even did this.
And not just cut off, but like so much government spending tends to perpetually increase. And
It's a ratchet. Yeah, it only goes one way.
I think it was Ronald Reagan who said something along the lines of, the closest thing we have to eternal life on Earth
is a government program.
Is a government program.
Yeah.
So it's not just that this is the first time that a major source of funding has been directly cut. I could be wrong, John, but I think this is probably the first time that Planned Parenthood funding has ever decreased.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
or that its rate of increase has slowed.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, literally going back over the last 20 years to the end of the Clinton administration, that we've said this before, and all respect to George W. Bush, I think he was a good guy. Mm-hmm. He was a strong.
He did a lot of good
person.
things, and he's done something. He did some things that Trump still has not done.
Yes, but if I had to say, maybe his biggest pro-life failing was not tackling Planned Parenthood funding more aggressively
and nominating Harriet Miers.
Well, yeah,
and maybe we'll see. Maybe nominating
maybe
John
not,
Roberts.
Yeah, we'll see. But that's the reality, is that this is a huge victory that no president, certainly not President Obama, but not even President Bush, has done.
Yes. So there you go. We call it strikes and balls here on Right to Life Radio. If Trump does something good, we say that he's done something good on the abortion issue. If he does something bad, we say he's done something bad. So that's the way we play it. All right. Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra is going to be playing us out. One for my baby and one for the road. We'll see you all next week. Goodbye.